Welcome to Validation Science, Lesson 4. This is about the regulators. In this lesson, we're going to be looking at who are HPRA, who are EMA, who are the FDA, and what is the ICH. So that's quite a lot of anagrams. In Ireland, we have HPRA. They are, if you want to sell or you want to manufacture drugs in Ireland, you have to abide by the Health Products Regulatory Authority, HPRA, that's what it stands for, their rules and their regulations. They will audit the company to ensure compliance with the regulations as well. They were previously known as the Irish Medicines Board, or the IMB. Their HEPRA is to ensure insofar as possible that the quality, safety and efficacy of medicines available in Ireland, and to participate in systems designed to do that throughout the European Union. So they're part of EMA. The functions of HEPRA are to license medicinal products for humans and for animals as well. They license of wholesalers of human medicines too. They license manufacturers of human and veterinary medicines. They also cover medical devices, drug safety monitoring, and clinical trial licensing. They provide inspections of wholesale and manufacturing sites, so they're the people that will come in and audit you from an Ireland perspective. In Europe, we've got the EMA, the European Medicines Agency, and this is a pharmacovigilance effort across Europe, and they coordinate everything there. So they put together the requirements, the standards, they look after the regulations, and then on site it's conducted by the National Competent Medicine Authority, so your likes of your HPRA. In Europe, every country has its own regulatory authority. As we've mentioned already, in Ireland this is HPRA. In the UK, you might have heard of the MHRA, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. The EMA, the European Medicines Agency, was established to achieve the EU aim of a single market in 1995. So their goal is not to have a whole lot of different standards across Europe, but to keep it harmonised across the region. The EC directives are passed, so they make a law passed by the European Commission, and that is the equivalent to the FDA. Their functions are very similar to the FDA, but they're only focused on medicinal products and on medical devices. In the United States, you would have heard about the FDA, the Food and Drug Authority, and if you want to sell or you want to manufacture drugs in the US of A, you have to abide by the FDA rules and regulations, and they will audit your manufacturing company as well. The FDA are responsible for a number of industries, including pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical, but also food and tobacco as well. They have a much wider scope than the European regulators. The regulations for the FDA are called the CFRs, known as the Code of Federal Regulations. The main part of the CFRs that apply to us are Part 210 and Part 211. So they talk about GMPs in manufacturing, processing, packing or holding of drugs, and the ones for finished pharmaceuticals as well. If you have a non-compliance for the FDA, you will be issued a 483. So that's the form they use to write up their citations. So you'd hear an inspection going well if there was no 483s, going badly if there was a number of 483s. If they want to expedite something, if they're very concerned about it, if it's a very serious thing, if they found a number of very serious issues on a site, or if they found the same issue occurring on multiple sites of the same company, they could issue you a warning letter. And a warning letter is exactly what it says in the tin. We're warning you, we're not happy with how you're doing things. We need you to address it straight away and in a comprehensive way, or we're going to take further action. The next line up in the FDA's arsenal is a consent decree. If the FDA puts you under a consent decree, as has happened to a number of companies, it means they're no longer happy with how you're running your business. They'll expect you to hire in consultants that you must pay for to release your batches. If they're allowing you to still maintain releasing your batches, you'll pay very severe fines. It's very public. Your PR for the company would be very damaged by a consent decree, and it's not a place that anybody wants to be. They also have the ability to impose fines. In severe cases, they can impose prison sentences and disgorgement. So disgorgement is where they can ban you from working in the industry. The Act is passed in the US, so this was the Food and Drug Act, which we talked about before. In this one, it talks about a drug shall be deemed adulterated if the methods used in, or the facilities or controls used for its manufacture, processing, packing, or holding do not conform to, or are not operated or administered in conformity with the current good manufacturing practices. So that's quite a legalese. ICH is the International Conference for Harmonization, known as ICH. What the ICH is was formed at a meeting in April 1990. So it's a number of regulatory bodies started it off, the European Union, the FDA and the Japanese regulatory bodies, along with some pharmaceutical representative bodies as well. And since then, many more companies or many more regulators and many more pharmaceutical groups have joined the ICH. It consists of expert working groups, EWGs they're called. They include observers and members, and they're constituted from both the regulatory bodies and also from the industry. And you can see here some of the members that are involved in the ICH. We're going to be talking about this again in a minute. They issue guidelines under the following categories: quality, safety, efficacy, and multidisciplinary. The reasons that there was need to rationalise and harmonise was driven by really concerns over the rising cost of healthcare. So because there was more generics in the market, the branded companies were needing to up the price of their drugs to get back the money that they were losing from losing their patents. And that meant that there was rising costs. Patients weren't happy. Also, there was an escalation in the costs of R&Ds around the same time. And companies were finding they were having to duplicate a lot of their work to keep the regulatory bodies happy. They might have had slightly different criteria in America and slightly different criteria in Europe. So the goal was that you should be able to harmonise all of the requirements. And also they needed to be able to meet the public expectation that there should be a minimum of delay in making safe and effective treatments available for patients who are waiting for them. It's very frustrating for somebody to know if they have an acute disease that there's a new medication coming down the line, but it could take up to 10 years for clinical trials and approvals to be granted for that product to get out onto the marketplace. So the expert working groups in the ICH are broken down into 4 main categories. The first one of those is the quality guidelines. So this group is looking at the quality area, and they're including pivotal milestones such as looking at stability studies, defining relative thresholds for impurity testing, and having a more flexible approach to pharmaceutical quality. So this is where we talked about the ICH, Q8, Q9, Q10. These type of guidelines are coming out of the quality group. So they're providing a really important job for both consumers, regulatory bodies, and for the industry as well. They're keeping things ticking over and making things more effective. The second group is the safety guidelines. So the safety guidelines are really looking at things like uncovering potential risks like carcinogenic, genotoxicity and reprotoxicity. And they're looking at those things in terms of clinical trials and trying to improve the requirements around that. The efficacy guidelines are really looking at concerned with the design, the conduct, the safety and the reporting of clinical trials, and looking at new medicines and how new medicines are being manufactured and generated. The multidisciplinary guidelines are those things that don't fall uniquely into one category. They might have a finger in lots of different pies, and they include medical terminology and the common technical document, things like that. So just to recap, HPRA are the Irish regulators. The European Union, the European regulatory authorities, all countries have their own regulatory bodies for the likes of the MHRA in the UK and the HPRA in Ireland, for example. The EMA is the overriding agency that ensures consistency across the European Union. The ICH is the International Conference of Harmonisation. This is a group comprised of regulators and industry representatives to try and harmonise things in terms of their regulatory ability to try and streamline the processes. And the FDA are the US regulators. So you can have a look at the following websites and read up a little bit more about each of these regulatory bodies and see what's in their website. So to check your understanding, who are the Irish regulators? Who are EMA? Why are the FDA so important in the pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical industries? And who are ICH? Thank you for your time. We'll see you for the next lesson.